Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, got the privilege of talking to Mr. Joe Morris from out there in the bush in Alaska tonight. How's it going, Joe?
It's going well. Right now I'm in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. It's the biggest national park in the United States. It's 14,000 square miles.
And that's over by the Yukon, right? Kind of?
We're below the Yukon. We're between, we're out in the middle of nowhere. That's why nobody knows us. So McCarthy, Alaska is the little tiny town that's inside this park. And if you want to Google it, that's the only thing. It's the only way you're going to find me.
Gotcha. So how remote are you right now away from is it you're way out in the bush is what it sounds like?
Yeah, I am. Yes. If you wanted to look at a map, I'm 325 miles from Anchorage, and I don't know how far from Valdez, but those are the two reference points. So I'm on the bush, way out in the bush.
Doing anything fun out there?
A lot of hiking, looking around, doing photography. We got a lot of bears this year.
Okay.
So it's mating season, and don't really want to be around them right now.
Yeah, probably not. Watch your back. But it sounds like you've had some really interesting encounters in that park, and I'd love to talk to you about it. So tell me what kind of things you run across out there.
Well, we have all kinds of bears and moose, and there's actually something that's more rare, I think, than a Sasquatch, and it's called a glacier bear. Right. And I saw one. So it crawled up on me. I was not being quiet at all, and I had a campfire, and it come up and looked at me. Scared the crap out of me. I didn't know what it was. Anyway, other than that, I've seen one Sasquatch within 40 yards in the sunlight, as clear as if you were standing there. What happened is, I can tell you the whole story. You want me to start from the beginning?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I was working at a lodge in McCarthy, Alaska. Not hard to find out which one it is. I prefer, I don't know what to say. I don't really want the attention drawn to the lodge. It has nothing to do with it. But I happened to be working there, and it was late, probably August, maybe July, I can't remember. And a friend of mine works here, and he, we were just burnt out because it's a lot of work. It's only open for a certain amount of time, and you got to close it down, open it again next year. So we were wiped, and I said, hey, man, I'm going up to the toe. I don't want to walk. I'm going to grab my truck. You want to go? And he's like, yeah. So the toe is the end of the Root Glacier. And the Root Glacier is spelled R-O-O-T. And it's the glacier that happens to be about 1.5 miles from where I'm sitting. So anyway, we run up there, and you can hear it melting, and once in a while you'll see calves, and, it's cool to watch. It's pretty. And it's cooler because it's summertime, and you got wind coming off the ice. So we were on the way up there, going slow, and I'm in this old beat-up Toyota. And both of us have done this trail a million times. So we're going up this trail, and I'm going really slow, just in case there might be somebody or bears jump out or whatever, because we're out in the bush. And I'm cruising along, and I come up just to a tiny rise, not really a hill. But as I do, I see this black head. and it's smoothly crossing in front of us. Well, it was going to. The way it was moving, it was smooth. It was not like a bear walks, a moose walks. Nothing walks that smooth. And I immediately got an ice cream headache. And I said, it's a Bigfoot. And my buddy wasn't even paying attention. He's like, what? I stopped and I said, look, dude, I think that's a Bigfoot. And it walked behind the hill, the slight rise. So all we could see was like, I don't know, most of its head as it floated by. And it looked like it was floating. So I get up there with the truck. I'm like, well, we're going to go find it. So I come up over the rise and he's not there. Whatever it was, wasn't there. So I told Neil, don't slam the car door. So I pull up into the brush a little bit and stop. We open the truck doors, and I'm always armed with a 10mm SIG. And he happened to have a AR-15, which isn't great for bear, but it makes a lot of noise. So I said, hey, if you go down about 60 yards and start going in the bush, once you go in, I'll go in, and maybe you'll chase it to me, whatever it is. I thought it was a wounded bear. I did not. Last thing on my mind was really a Sasquatch. I'd never seen one, don't really care about them. And he did. So when he walked in, I started walking in, and I walked in just past the brush line, kind of, and I stopped in the shadows. I've hunted my whole life. Neil, he kind of walked in and made all kinds of noise stomping in there, and he stopped. And I heard him kind of make this weird noise. And he gasped. And I looked over at him automatically. And I had already scanned the area looking, but I heard him gasp, and I looked over, and before my eyes could get to his area, I realized there was a person standing there about 40 feet away. To me, this thing looked about 6'5". It was well built, had the V-shaped body like a linebacker or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't looking at me. It appeared that it was looking, well, it was not looking, it wasn't facing me. Its body basically was facing 3/4 away from me. So I was seeing the left shoulder, ear, back. You could see the leg, but I couldn't see its face. And it was like almost doing it on purpose is what I got right away. Wouldn't look at me. Kind of glanced at me. And when it did, its eye, I couldn't believe it. The eyeball had a little bit of yellow, like our white eye area would be. But this thing, it's sunlight. My glasses I have these automatic darkening glasses, and they've darkened down. And I look at this thing's eyes, and the pupils are enormous. I mean, it's all pupil. And I'm thinking, how can this thing see in the sunlight? Even an owl's eyes close down quite a lot to regular in the sunlight. It's not like they're totally blown out like they do at night. And that was shocking. And then the next thing that freaked me out, well, I was completely in shock, kind of. And the next thing that freaked me out is the way it ran. This thing took off with no gaining of speed like, a bear would or a human. This thing took off from 0 to 60. It appeared to be 60 miles an hour instantly. And it went about 75 yards, jumped over some trees that were down, and then took off again like 60 miles an hour. And that was it. That was the end of it. So I walk back to the truck, and Neil comes back, and he's all excited. He's like, hey, I saw a Bigfoot. And I'm like, what'd you see? And he says, I saw a human-shaped arm, except for it was too long. And this thing was walking or running, and he saw the arm swing. Well, that's not what I saw. I saw the whole thing, and except for its face. And I don't know what gender or whatever,
sure.
Female. So anyway, it didn't really last long. It was gone. So we stood by the truck, talked about it a little, and we actually drove out to the tow again. Kept going, hung out, and come back. Looked around, there wasn't nothing there. So that was that. That was 2017. And it didn't keep me out of the woods. There was no violent encounter or whatever.
You were scared to go back in the woods. It sounds like you're pretty comfortable with the woods.
Oh, hell yeah. No, I go back in there.
Yeah.
I did then. It's not like I'm going to see another one.
Well,
I'm 55 years old. Or back then, I think I was 50 or whatever. Yeah, 50 is about right. I'd never seen one in my life. The chance of seeing another one are zero. And then I saw another one 5 years later.
Right.
And it was enormous.
The first encounter that you had, did you notice anything? You saw the back of it, sounded like. Did you notice anything about the shape of the head at all? Anything around that part of the Bigfoot?
All I saw is my son is 6'7". So in my mind, this thing's a couple inches shorter. Its shoulders are probably the same width, maybe a little bit more. And it was very muscular. As far as its head, I'm prior military. And if you take people and you shave their heads like they're in the service, or even really short hair, you can see the shape of their head. So this thing's hair wasn't that long on its head. I would say maybe 2 to 3 inches at the most. And its head was like a human. It was a human. In my mind, this was a person standing there. And I had a gun in my hand. So I stepped out and I saw the brown fur, and I've been around Alaska a long time. So I immediately drew my pistol. And then I realized what I was looking at. And I thought in my mind, immediately, this is a person. So I put my weapon away immediately and looked at it.
I'm guessing the immediate reaction to pull your pistol would be because you see that color, you think it's bear, something like that. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody, well, I can't say everybody. In my opinion, the people that spend a lot of time out in the outdoors here in Alaska, they do it armed.
Sure.
You look at all the villagers, when they leave their villages, they're armed. So it's natural to be armed here. If you don't, you're going to be in bear bait.
Absolutely. From things I've seen about Alaska, you don't get many chances to mess around, for sure. You get maybe one chance and that's it. So
that's right. You make one mistake out here, especially when you're alone, like I go, and you're done. It's over. So you just got to be careful. So anyway, so I know you want me to talk about the next one, the 5 year later thing.
Real quick before we get to that area you were in, were there ever any stories you heard of other sightings, or was it a pretty unique thing for the area that you were in?
Well, I didn't, of course, this has started me on my big Sasquatch adventure of the internet, trying to find information. So, beforehand, I didn't really care about them. I never heard about them. I'd heard about this thing called the Acoustica, but it wasn't a Bigfoot. It's the Otter Man.
Exactly.
So I'm inland, right now. I'm inland. I'm about a mile and a half from where I was. And I'm inland 120 miles from the Gulf or the coast. So there's no Acoustica here. That's what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
They're on the coast and stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, let's continue.
No is the answer.
Yeah.
So afterwards, yes, absolutely. I found out lots of things about this area.
5 years later, then you had another thing happen to you, which is totally unexpected because you're only expecting maybe one in your lifetime.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I mean, it's not realistic to think you're going to see another one. So anyway, yeah, I saw another one last year. And then the other one is I saw a disappearing stump in the same area.
Interesting. A disappearing stump.
Yes. And I can explain that one.
Yeah.
So I've had back problems and they're service related. So I've had, treatments on my back. Unfortunately, it left me unable to walk for a while. So when I was able to walk, I walked all over the place like the doctor and the physical therapist said. So I'd walk from about where I am down to the tow road, walk in there, walk all over the place on uneven surfaces because that's what the doctor wanted me to do. And then when I was couldn't do it anymore, I'd walk back home, back here. And I did that day after day after day after day. It's just physical therapy. I have to. If I want to walk, I have to do it. So I walk this trail over and over every day. And in Alaska, this time of year, it doesn't really get dark. It's more twilight. So I walk this trail and I'm headed towards the toe. And I've looked at this same trail and everything in it a whole bunch of times. So everything's basically memorized. And as I walk up, and I'm a hunter, photographer, so I can tell you what's not really supposed to be in place. If I saw a place and something changed, I can pretty much tell you what it was. My brain will tell me there's something changed. Anyway, so I'm walking down this trail, and I'm looking to the right for no reason, and I see this big black stump. Now, the toe of the glacier is where the glacier is receding, meaning nothing can grow there quick enough that would be a 3-foot stump or more. That's impossible.
Gotcha.
Unless the thing's petrified. And I've walked this area a whole bunch and I've never seen it. So I stop and I look at it and I light up a cigarette and I'm thinking, I'm tired anyway because I'm hurting. And I look at this stump and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go sit on it. What is this thing? It's weird. It shouldn't be here. And I walk towards it and my feet get tangled in the brush. I look down, get them untangled and keep going. And I look up and it's gone.
Oh boy.
And one thing I hadn't told you is while I was watching this stump before I walked towards it, it opens its eyes. So on the side of the stump, its eyes opened.
Really?
And I was shocked. I'm like, what is this? So I thought whatever it was would get up and run away. That's why I was standing there slowly smoking this cigarette, looking at this thing. And it wasn't far at all. I don't know how many feet. It was a ways, I'm a bow hunter. It would be an easy shot, so 25, 30 yards. So I'm like, well, and then it closed its eyes and it turned it into you couldn't tell it wasn't anything else. I'm like, well, I'm going to go find out what it is. So I got a gun on, no big deal. So I walk towards it, get stuck in the brush a little bit, look up, it's gone. No sound at all. Hadn't rained in a couple of days. And I'm like, well, if I walk in there, it sounds like I'm, walking through a bunch of crushed up peanut shells or something. But so I'm like, well, this is weird. So I walk back in there anyway, and I look around for 15 to 20 minutes. I look up in the trees. I look at the ground. I'm fairly good at tracking. Nothing's disturbed. And I'm thinking, wow, what in the world? So I walk back to the road or the trail. I walk down to the toe, do my thing, and walk home. And as I walk home, I use the same trail. And I keep looking to my left, which is where that area was. And I see nothing. No big deal. So I go home and, next day I get up and I have to go walking. So eventually I go walking, and this day it's later. So it's probably 11 o'clock, something like that. And I go walking because I put it off. It hurts. I don't want to do it, but I do it. So I go out there and the same trail. And I keep looking to the right because that's where I saw the disappearing stump. And I'm walking along looking for this stump-looking thing. And I stop because something tells my brain, well, something's out of place. So I look, and I'm studying the area, and I hurt really bad at that point. And I'm scanning the area, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to spend any much time on it. And I'm about to leave, and I look over, and behind this spruce tree that's about 12 feet high is, it's like a traditional Bigfoot standing there, except for this was jet black. You couldn't see anything, light coming off it. And it was still a little bit light. It's bluish light here. And it didn't move. I couldn't see its face. I didn't know if it was looking at me or looking the other way. I assumed it was looking at me. And it was enormous. It was 12 feet tall, 5.5 feet wide. And it's like my brain didn't register what it was until it did. And it was like, so I raised my right hand and I said, hey, big brother. And I turned and I walked away and walked down the toe and did my thing.
Wow.
And eventually I came back because it's really the only way to get home this way. So I come back and I'm freaked out. I'm looking behind me and stuff, but it didn't seem to bother. I got this feeling that it was watching the trail. It didn't give a crap about me. So anyway, I walk back that area and I'm really worried. And I keep looking all over the place, especially to my left. And I see nothing. That was the end of it.
I find it really interesting. The reaction you had when you saw it was, to raise your hand and say, hey, big brother. Like, what was it that you think that made you do that reaction? Was it something you'd heard previously, or is it just came out of you?
No, because in 2017, I went on the rabbit hole for information about what I'd seen because I didn't know what I'd seen. During that time, I'd learned that if you get fairly close to these things, and in my opinion, since I saw one the first time and I've listened to the native tales and learnings, they say they're people. So somewhere I heard, hey, that's proper greeting. You should say, hello, big brother, and leave. Or you should say more to it. But for me, that was all I could do. And that's what I did.
When you were doing research into this the years prior, were you going directly to those that you may have known around you, or was this things online, or
both? Mostly online. I know natives down throughout the state, but mostly down by the Copper River area at the basin. And the two people I know well there, it's a man and a female, and the man is not from Alaska and the lady is from Western Alaska. So her knowledge would be limited to Alaska, of course, but more specified in that area. I did talk to the gentleman, and he did not like talking about it. In general, he doesn't care, and he'll tell me areas that he just cannot sleep overnight because we both camp a lot. He does more than I do now, but we'd always be on our rigs, camping or hunt, whatever. Always out of town, and so he'd tell me the areas he couldn't sleep in, which I find weird because the guy can, he's just an outdoorsman and a native. He can park his rig and sleep anywhere, kind of like I do. But there are basically 3 places down there that I cannot sleep in. I've tried, but you can't.
Are those areas you can mention, or they're just random areas out in the bush?
No, I can mention them. I don't really want to get specific because I don't want to mess with the people in the area.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
So, but one of them, I didn't see anything, but I've heard things. And then the other two, they're just creepy, dude. I mean, I can go anywhere, sleep anywhere. It doesn't bother me. There are two places other than my favorite place that are just creepy. It's a deep, dark rainforest. There's absolutely no light because the foliage grows over. And if you usually have cloud cover, and if you get a moonless night, it's like being in a cave.
Wow. You mentioned you've heard some interesting things in certain areas. Have you ever heard like vocalizations, things like that?
Oh, yes.
Like what kind of things have you heard?
I have heard quite a few things. The strangest thing is I was down by this place I call it the Grayling Pond. And it's probably 18 miles from a little village. And back off the main road there, I don't know how many miles. It's little logging trails you follow. And if you don't know them, you're going to get lost. Anyway, so I'm parked next to this Grayling Pond. And I got one of those solo rangers going. It's a fire pit. And I'm sitting on a lawn chair kind of thing, camp chair, with my feet up on a table with a headlight on, and I'm reading a book. And it's nice out. Kind of misty, and it's a rainforest, so it's doable. And you get used to it. So I'm sitting there reading this book, and I hear these, owls. They're not uncommon. But first I hear ravens. And I'm like, why are ravens out this time of night? So they shut up, and I went back to reading. And then I heard owls. And the owls, they didn't sound right. There was too many of them. If you hear an owl, it's alone. It may have somebody else with it, another owl, but it's in another area hunting, just like it is. They don't hunt together. So I'm like, well, that's strange. There was like 3 of them. And I thought, well, that's weird. Maybe it's breeding season or something. So the hoots don't seem correct. And then one of the hoots, and I'm here sitting back reading the book, not really caring, paying attention. And this hoot turned into like the loudest scream from a woman you will ever hear in your life. And it was ridiculously long. And I put the book away and I looked around because I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Anything could walk up and eat me. I don't have a fence or anything around me. And I'm like, what was that? So I sat there for a while and I thought, well, I'm going to listen to this. And another one does it. And another one does it. And I'm like, wow. And they're not that far away. They're like, to me, they were like on the backside. Between me and the sound is a Grayling Pond, an opener, it's kind of an open area. It's tundra. And then it goes up onto the side of a mountain. And to me, they sounded like they were way back up the mountain, but they were really loud. So I thought, well, that's weird. And I was a little freaked out. So I sat there and, nothing really happened. And then the ravens kicked off again. And then I heard coyotes. And I thought, this is really weird. There is no way this is going on this time of night. There's nothing out here to draw them to where I am. At the time, there was rivers, two rivers, small rivers I had to ford to get to where I was. And they were packed with salmon. That's a great time to go camping because nothing's going to mess with you. They go eat salmon. Anyway, eventually these things are screaming. They sound like coyotes, and then they turn into people yelling. and then there's multiple ones going off at one time. And then I hear this one, and it is so loud, it cannot be explained. It shook my entire body. It fired off with this crazy scream like a lady. It was really, really loud. So it's this, I don't even know how to explain it. It's this piercing scream like a woman that's really in trouble. And then it turned into kind of a man being, murdered. And then it turned into like this animalistic scream. And it was almost all at once. It's really hard to explain. So I'm out there in the woods, and it's dark. If I shut my light off, I can't see anything. And I'm like, wow, I think it's time to go. So I load my chair into the truck and, do my little, make sure everything's picked up. Well, the fire pit's too hot to do anything to. I'm not worried about it. It's a rainforest. It's not going to burn. You're not going to have a forest fire there. So I get in the truck, and the way my SUV is made, I can look backwards with the doors open.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a chair back there where I can just chill out in and read. So I was. I'm like, well, at least I'll be in here. So I shut the two doors and I had the window open. And I'm like, okay, I want to listen to this. So they kept screaming. They kept repeating the same similar screams up on the mountain or between the mountain high. And then there were like two huge ones that seemed to have flanked me on each side. And what they would do is when they would scream, it was mostly the one on my left side. When this thing would scream, it was like in competition with the others. And it screamed so loud, it was, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, if I hadn't heard it, I'd think, yeah, dude, you're sure it was loud. No, this is like louder than an M16 report. But it kept going and going. And finally, the one on the right started. So I got these two gigantic things I can see, and they're hollering like nothing I've ever heard. Just, it's insane. So I'm like, well, I think it's time to leave again. So I crawl over, and I'm about to shut the hatch and just crawl in the front seat. I'm not going outside. And then the one on the left started laughing. And it was this, I can't produce it, but it was this deep, truly laugh. And it started like, oh, but then it turned into like this demonic laughing. And it was incredibly loud and very deep. And then the one on the right did it. So I'm between these two things. And I'm thinking, I should be terrified. But I'm not. And I started laughing. Along with these two guys or whatever. And I thought, there's something wrong here. I got to get out of here. So I listened a little longer, and I'd been there maybe 40 minutes at the most, something like that. I don't know. Since they started talking. Oh, they talked too. And I shut the hatch, and I'm like, I can't deal with this. I'm going somewhere else. I'm not super freaked out. So I crawl in the front, and I drive towards this glacier that's hard to get to. And it's kind of behind a ridge, the same ridge I think they were yelling from, but it's kind of on the backside. So I park there, and I get out, and, head up pee. So I go out in the woods, and there's no woods now. It's all open glacier scrub. So I can see. And I get out, look around with my light, do my thing, and listen. And I don't hear anything but the glacier ice moving behind me, which is absolutely normal. It's about set. Some of them are the size of a car, some of them the size of your fist. And when the wind blows, they make noise. They bump into each other. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to sleep here tonight, and I'll go deal with the fire pit in the morning. So and I'm tired. So I crawl back in my SUV and go to bed. Make sure all the doors are locked. Go to bed. There's nobody out there. There's no human beings out there. And sometime during the night, I wake up and I hear this sound of something bouncing off the top of my SUV, off the roof. I'm thinking, what? And I because it's a coastal area, coastal Alaska, I'm thinking about seagulls, and they're dropping clams on me, trying to break them open. And then I realize it's the middle of the night. They ain't gonna be out. So I listen, and I hear these. They're basically small pebbles. They're getting bounced off the top of my truck, and I'm not scared. And I actually didn't care. I heard that if you let them do their thing, they get bored and leave. But if you interact with them, they like that. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. They just want to be interacted with. So I left them and I went to sleep, and everything was fine in the morning. And then in the morning, I drove over, picked up my fire pit, cleaned it out, and left.
Wow. You mentioned you heard them talking as well?
Yes.
Can you describe what kind of talking that you heard?
All right. So I've been in Alaska 12 years, and I've worked remote villages, native villages, and Yupik, and I can't think of the other one. Anyway, they're real common here. And Yupik language, where I used to hang out and work, that was common. So Yupik, it's hard to, it almost sounds Asian, but it's its own thing. So these big things were sounding like they wanted to speak in Yupik. They'd started, but it was like, man, I've never heard that. It's a different cadence. It's super fast, and they sound really angry. That's the only way I can explain it.
That is fast.
And I only heard that from two guys, those two males. I believe they're males. I didn't see anything. I couldn't. But the two that were closer to me, the big laughing things,
right?
They were the ones that I heard speak. And I think they were talking to each other. Not long. That was right before I left. And I'm like, no. So anyway, I have heard speaking, it's people or whatever, speaking in areas that it's impossible. There's nobody there. And it's always this Yupik sounding thing.
Wow.
Usually women and children, they laugh and, they say their thing. And it sounds like they're picking berries and they're really happy. But, I know there's nobody there. I can go walk over I'd already walked past this place. It's glacier. It's like a moon out here in some places. You can't hide. There's nothing there. So you walk past, sit down. I'm a photographer, so I get ready to start taking pictures, and I'm like, you hear Yupik. And there's nobody there. There's nobody out here.
Would you ever go back to that area that you said is Grayling Lake or
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'll go back. I plan to go back here probably next month.
And that's the Wrangell St. Elias National Park area. It's the same area as we were talking
That's
before.
correct.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I'm in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park right now. And I'm indoors because it's raining. I don't want to go out and slop around. But, tomorrow I'll be out at the same exact place I saw these two Sasquatch. It's not far, and I still have to walk.
Wow, and you're headed out there tomorrow. That's nuts. Wow. That's incredible.
I was out there yesterday.
Oh, you were? Wow.
Well, it's just, I walk it all the time. And, people say, well, they get this weird feeling. And I do a little bit when I'm out there, but it's completely not. I can't explain it. It's not threatening at all. It's just, I don't think they give a crap about me. I just happen to be in the area.
Just happen to be there. Yeah.
I always walk alone. I'm always alone out here. And it's by choice. Because if I have a dog, it's loud. I can't get my wildlife photos. A lot of people are bored because you have to sit around quietly, in a homemade blind or whatever. And
yeah.
It's considered boring for a lot of people. So what was your last question? Sorry.
No problem. Have you heard anything that would be similar to anything that sound like ape or a monkey or anything weird? Sometimes people say they hear stuff like hoots or gibbons, things like that. Yeah,
I have heard the hoot from a gigantic gibbon or whatever they call them, the things that scream, little monkeys that make ridiculous sounds. It did sound kind of like that a couple times, and I've heard the hooting. They don't do it over and over. It's like you'll hear it in the background, and it never meant anything to me. I don't care. It doesn't. I just don't care. It doesn't register. It's not a threat. It's nothing. I can't take a picture of it.
Right.
I'm not going to eat it.
Have you ever considered taking an audio recorder out with you when you go to these areas?
Funny you may ask. I just got one. So
I love it. It's
all
go
right.
time.
I'll be out there next month, and I'm actually going to camp out my favorite place. They happen to like the stream, and we'll see what happens. I don't think they care about me. I'm in the area. To me, it's like they're having a potlatch. You know what that is?
Remind me. I think I know the gist of what you're saying, but I'd love to hear about it.
So a potlatch or a powwow to maybe a lesser extent. Mm-hmm. The natives, it's basically a celebration, and it can be for different things. Lord knows what they're celebrating, but that's what it reminds me of.
Fascinating.
They're definitely having fun.
If you happen to get some interesting audio, definitely reach out. I would love to hear it, and I can get you in touch with some guys that can really analyze it as well. That's what I was looking for. And the whole thing is, I can get the great videos. I can take pictures of the footprints. I can record the audio. That'd be nothing. It's just fun for me. I don't care. I'll play it for a friend of mine, and then, hey, you ever heard this in the woods? But my life doesn't. I don't care. You know what I mean? I totally get it. I'm looking over your email real quick, and you had mentioned in the email, I think it was the Chugach National Forest.
Yeah, Chugach. Yeah, it's below
Chugach.
Me.
Is that the that's the area where you had mentioned before with like the screaming and the laughing, etc.?
Correct.
Oh, very interesting.
And I've seen some giant footprints down there.
Really?
Huge. Oh, it's ridiculous. I left. And then I did see some other tracks down there that I was a fishing guide, and I didn't want my clients freaking out, so I squished them all out. Oh,
you would wipe away the tracks so you wouldn't freak out your clients.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's a lot of money to fly out there and have fun.
That's incredible.
You want to fly out there and say, look at it and go with that. You can't say, I don't know. You're in the bush. They're with you. It's a one-on-one situation. They're going to make sure you're there to make sure they live through this. They can have fun and do whatever they want as long as it's legal. But, it's me keeping the bears off them and showing them where to fish.
Sure. It makes sense.
It's really boring sometimes. for me. I'd rather be out taking pictures somewhere.
In that forest, does it kind of bump up against the Kenai Peninsula?
No.
Okay.
No. When you get a chance, Google the Copper River.
Okay.
And if you go down by, there's a place this is where I saw the tracks near. It's called the Night Island. And it's within the actual Copper River. And
Night Island?
That's a weird place down there. Yeah, Night Island. And that'll bring you into the Copper River Basin.
Okay.
With Google.
What is so weird about that area?
Oh, that's reports from some locals about something like a circular pool of light, and it shoots up in the air and it's gone.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So you can't make up.
Yeah, I know.
And then the footprints I saw were huge, and I'm like, I'm not going looking. I just got in my truck and left. I saw a humongous bear out there. I assume it was natural. I've seen plenty of bears, hundreds and probably thousands of them. 16 up in it, I've seen 16 in a day. That's not a big deal. But this bear, if we were standing on a pavement and this thing walked past me, it would be, I'm 5'10". It would be as tall as my back, or its back, my head would be, or maybe I'd be a little shorter.
Stuff you don't mess with, for sure.
And I actually talked to a local law enforcement guy, a federal forest service guy. And I told him what I saw and where I saw it, and he laughed, and he's like, yeah, they get really big. He's like, usually people don't see them from that area, so congratulations.
You win.
Right.
Yeah, you win the prize. Yeah.
That's not what I'm looking for, man.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, is there a third species of bear out there? That's what I asked him. He's like, no. They just get, they keep growing if they have food. So,
wow.
Anyway.
Joe, incredible accounts. Thank you so much for spending some time chatting about this. This has been incredible.
You're welcome.
Please, if you...
Yeah, if I hear anything else, I'll send it to you.
Fantastic. And yeah, I definitely hope to hear from you in the future, but thank you so much, Joe, for chatting tonight. All right, Bigfoot Society, thanks for coming back for another episode. Got the privilege of talking to a new friend, Josh, today. Josh contacted me over the internet, and he said he had some interesting stories to share about Bigfoot from his time growing up in Alaska. So how's it going tonight, Josh?
Oh, it's going great. Beautiful day, Can't complain about that.
Oh, absolutely. It is, we had some storms roll through here, but now the grass is growing. Everything's nice and lush, and we are loving it. So same out where you're at, or?
Well, I mean, the weather's been nice. It's like it gets really hot and dry out here in the summertime, and the winter it's real like a mild rainy, kind of easy winter. So I can't complain about that. But yeah, it's been like, because like how I grew up in Alaska and like the experiences that I had previously, like I'm slightly more aware of my surroundings, and like I've noticed it's a little bit squatchy out here too, like a little off-putting, like to say the least. Especially like because I still like to hunt, and I've been drawing. I drew a couple of great tags, and I had like on our way back from the beach out here in Oregon, the highway cuts across where my tag was supposed to be, and I'm like just keeping an eye out just to sort of like size it up, because I don't like to just willy-nilly I'll wander into the woods unless I know it's it's okay, you know. And lo and behold, like just along the road, a uh, big hairy paralays comes stepping out of the woods and stop at a little like rock outcropping right at the edge of the highway. So I'm passing by. I'm like, I gotta change my tag. And that's what for the most part it's been like out here. When you notice like the little things, the subtle things that people might not like pay attention to because they got their lives and all that stuff. But there is a lot that goes on in like the woods surrounding like just about anywhere. I've noticed. Sometimes like animal noises and stuff. You got your standard like deer and like maybe a raccoon here and there, but like sometimes there's stuff that's out of place and it sounds big and it doesn't sound correct. Like it sounds out of place. And it's been like an actual struggle to like say go camping or anything like that just because I'm aware of it all. Do you experience that, or have you ever experienced that?
So Josh and longtime listeners of the show could probably tell this story a little bit as well. But so I've experienced, I would say, maybe more Class B type things in Iowa, when we went out last year, Tate and myself, and, I experienced a tree being pushed over in the woods in front of us, wood knocks captured at night. And then my tent was unzipped at 3:45 a.m. on a Sunday night when we were out in the woods. That still messes with me today. I've not really gotten over that. And we are going back out there, and listeners can watch Sasquatch: A Search for Sabe, Tate's documentary, the Iowa episode. You can find out more about that. So I've not yet heard a vocalization or actually seen a Bigfoot, Josh, but I am getting closer, right?
Yeah. If you ever if you say go on YouTube or something, look up what a caribou's grunt sounds like, and it's like a certain kind of like a grunt, like almost like I've heard other people you've had on a show mention like a grunty piggy sound, like a huff, and then like a nasally, like sort of like a deer will give like a certain kind of grunt. A caribou is much heavier and like they got bigger lungs, and so it's much louder. And what I've noticed is like if they're when I've been in hunting in Alaska for caribou, I thought that was a great sound at first, but then I was like, I'm sleeping on the side of the road. I'm not even up in the mountains yet. I'm about to like hit the trail in the morning, and I've already got like a caribou next to my tent. I'm like looking at my rifle. Okay, I guess I'm getting up. It's my lucky day. And then all of a sudden I hear a big like heavy like a hoof, and then like and then like they're just, it's gone by the time I'm unzipping. It's like nothing was there. Like a caribou would just hang around, and there was nothing, and like this thing was like sniffing and grunting around the tent, and I'm like, is it a bear? Is it a caribou? I hope it's not a moose. It's the stuff like that where you can't see directly what you're dealing with, and there's like a handful of things, and in the back of my mind I try not to think about it. It's like it could be a squatch just like checking me out, and like I just felt funny. Like when I actually dealt with that, like it was a little terrifying, because like you don't know until you know, and then you got to get out and face the music and just see what's going on. And it's a little crazy. Yeah, I can understand. I can feel you. Like if a zipper, that's like way beyond like you know, yeah, it's like your safety bubble is like that thin vinyl like wall of the tent, and like a zipper is like the one thing like animals can't really figure out. But then something's like oh my gosh,
Not cool.
Like I don't know if I've been
Josh, when you heard whatever it is you heard in that tent, and you heard that huff noise outside, did you hear actual like? Do you think it was something running away? Can you remember what that sounded like?
It sounded like it was like you could hear its footsteps. It was like a lot of the roads are like gravel out in the back parts of Alaska, and so when something's stepping out there, it's going to make that crinkly noise. But the crinkly noise it made was kind of soft, and that's what I've noticed. It was very soft, like a caribou. It's going to be a hoof, and it's going to have like a really pronounced like step sound to it. It didn't have that, but it only had maybe, I could hear it circling. And then when I started to unzip the tent, it gave the huff, and then I could hear it like maybe like 3 or 4 steps, and it was like moving away. And so then I got out, and it was already gone, like into the brush. And that now looking back, that stuff, I was like, that's way squatchy. That's very squatchy. And that's just like, the not confirmed sighting, kind of just I heard something funny kind of thing. But then like the real stuff happened when I was a kid, like the worst of it. Should we get into that part yet?
Real quick, there's probably some people that are curious. Can you share anything about where that area was where you had that tent encounter?
Yeah. Okay. If you go past Willow up the highway there's a place called Montana Creek, and I know that the bears go there during the silver salmon run to get the salmon, and up in the mountains there, the caribou will be coming through to feed, and the berries are usually starting to ripen. But it is just north of Hatcher Pass. It's just like pretty much on a map you could see it's like kitty corner to close to where I grew up and had my previous encounters. But if you just go on like Google Earth or something, you can find it. Just type in Montana Creek, and it should just take you there. Most of the stuff that I experienced was just around the Talkeetna Mountains there. But later on, I guess I'll just jump into that story with the tent. The after I experienced that, I decided I'm not sleeping anymore. So I packed up the tent, and I decided to just push on and just get out of the area. And so I packed up my little one-man tent, and I just hopped it down the road. I had my uncle drop me off there because I thought that's where the trailhead was. Turns out it was like another 5 miles down the road. So I had like quite a hike to get just to the trailhead, just so I could get up the mountain. My main focus at that exact moment was like to get into the high ground, because I knew the bears were feeding on fish and they're going to be in the low ground. And so I just decided after that, I was out of there, because I didn't want to contend with the bear. I just wanted to get my bag and go, So I start hiking up the mountain, get to the trailhead, Montana Creek, start heading up there. There's like a 4-wheeler trail that goes all the way up into the mountains, and it just hugs the canyon to the Montana Creek below. And there's like waterfalls and all that stuff and big timber. And I hiked for all morning. Like I got up probably about 4 a.m, got to the trailhead about 5:30 in the morning, and then I just started walking up. So right around 11 o'clock, 11:30 in the afternoon, I'm like, really starting to huff it, and I'm getting into the berries. I'm like feeling better about everything, and I'm starting to see big rocks and all this stuff, and a less sign of bear, and it's just looking a little better for me. So I'm like taking breaks and working my way up, and right when I start to get to this bend in the trail where I can't quite see around the corner.
We'll be back with more Bigfoot Society after these words from our sponsors.
I just hear this like a ferocious like roar, like a roar, and like huff, and a big like huff, and then like a boulder the size of a basketball went like just over my shoulder. Like I almost got clobbered by this big rock, like a big granite boulder, and I could not see what did that. Like, because like I've never had that happen to me. I like stopped, saw the thing, and I ran up just to peek up the corner, and the thing had already like douche, and I saw like the branches on the trees above the trail that are like rustling because it just like had just smacked through, and it sounded huge and about as big as a grizzly would be. So whatever it was, I'm like looking back, I'm like, that was another experience, and that's like two in like a 2 a.m. That's crazy. And so it was big enough. I had a 30-06 rifle with me. It was big enough to where I was like looking down at it. I was like, this is a pea shooter. Like I don't need to be going up here. So I immediately did an about face and just like walked back down the trail, called up my uncle, and like had him pick me up and all that stuff. But if you're looking for a little excitement, go to Montana Creek.
So there you go, listeners. And it sounds like you could be taking your life into your hands. Whenever you're doing Alaska stuff, you need to be well prepared, even probably beyond prepared is my guess. I've never been up there personally, but from what I've seen and heard, it is a extremely wild place, and you really only get a chance or maybe 2 chances when you're out there. So,
yeah. On my way out, my uncle said, I think you made the right decision. He said that there's been 4 or 5 hunters that have disappeared up there. And I'm like, after the fact, I'm like, oh, that made me feel so sick. I was like, all right, let's just get out of here. And it just sort of put things in perspective when it comes to hunting. Like you really do have to like look at the little things. Like, do people pull a lot of animals out of there, or do they pull very little? And why are they pulling very little? Is there something else eating the animals besides just like wolves and bears? Because there can't be that many wolves and bears eating all the deer, especially if surrounding areas have like say 1,500 deer come out maybe 5 miles down the road in either direction. Yeah, this one only pulls out like 12, and then you see a pair of hairy legs, and you know what's up. You can't be going in there, and you gotta just be aware, more aware than normal. It's camping is stressful. I thought it would relax me and stuff, but it's like it can be stressful, and just in that way, once you know what's actually out there, and it's like just cruising around, it takes on a whole other level. It's like it becomes way more real. And I've become accustomed to just camping in really crowded family campsites now, where like there's too many people for there to be trouble, you know.
Okay, interesting. So you stick to the groups for safety.
Yeah. It seems it works okay, but even still, you know, you got that in the back of your mind all the time, like thinking about like, is it safe? Because like, do these people, like, because I know none of them are looking out for that sort of stuff. They're just playing, having a grand time, but they're making lots of noise. And I like when people are making lots of noise. That's the best thing.
Have you heard of any other encounters happening in that Montana Creek area? Have you ever looked into that? Just curious.
I haven't heard of anything. The only thing I heard was what my uncle told me was that people have ended up missing up that very trail. So, but I do know that like farther south, I just like looked into like what's going on in the mountains, and like as I understand it, this is all secondhand. I haven't like directly like asked any of the local natives like if this is a true thing, but apparently the Willow side of Hatcher Pass is like they stayed out of that area because it was designated for the wild people, the Sasquatch out there. And where I grew up was just south of that. And down in the, so just a little farther south, you got Hatcher Pass. It comes out to Willow, and just over that mountain is like Government Peak, and then it like slopes down. And then you were at the Matanuska Valley. You got Fishhook Road, the Little Susitna rivers coming out of the mountains. You got like a string of lakes, and like it was like just about endless forest all the way up to the mountains. And since then it's like they've a bunch of developers have come through and like just put in like 100 houses in there. And, but before that, when I was there, it was just like raw wilderness, and it was like on the backside of a military reservation that like, so nobody went in there, you know. The house I grew up in was like just across the street from this wilderness, and so there was a little creek in there, and there was like a few lakes that they were all connected to, and like it was like a blast, you know. You just look forward to just like going with your friends and just like cutting into the woods and like splashing around and, you know, wrestling and whatever, you know, boy stuff. But at times, like one day, like my brother and I went out to the backside of the lake, and we had never actually been out there before, but it was like this little meadow that had grown in off of this little marsh, and we decided to just like slink in there and just check it out. And it was just me and my little brother. We weren't very big. Like, I think I was like maybe 10. He was like 7 or 8. You know, just, you know, playing with stuff, picking things up and looking at things. I think he was tying his shoe and squats down, and I look over, and in the tree line, this was like the very first time we saw something. There was like just a huge Sasquatch, like in the tree line, sort of like his hands on like the highest branches, and he's just watching us, but he's like rocking from side to side. And then once he realizes we saw him, he looked down and away, and he just sort of slinked and disappeared. He got real low, super low and like kind of like disappeared into the brush. And my brother was like, we need to get out of here. And I was like, okay. And just the fact that like I know people have mentioned that they have like a silvery shimmer to some of their fur. What I've noticed about them is like they have an undercoat of like denser fur, but then there's like these like a much lighter, wispier, longer coat on top of that. So there's like a more like so like 2 layers of fur. The upper layer is more like it picks up the light, and when you're like, say if it's like when the sun's starting to set and the dew starts coming in, it's harder to pick them up. They sort of blend in with like the mist a little more. But like because the sun was still out, I was able to pick up the red in his fur, his under fur, and it just silhouetted him enough for us to pick it up and just notice him. And that was like the very first time. And so that we never went back to that area, at least for a few years. But that following winter, we hadn't mentioned it to anybody. That following winter, we found this little closer to home. We found a nice little like gentle sloping hill, and we wanted to go sledding. So we went with our friends. We're sledding down this hill. We get out there, and we notice these tracks, these big tracks, and like either it's a bear or a moose. And my brother and I both knew it was like probably one of those things. And I said, I think it's Bigfoot. And the friends we were with were not having that stuff. There's just some people that just don't, unless it's in a zoo, it doesn't exist. I don't got time or any of that stuff. And he's like, I don't believe you. I don't want to hear it. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, whatever. So we dropped it. But the trail led out from where that creek was diagonally towards the Anderson Lake, which is the lake we live next to. There's like 3 lakes there. There's Anderson Lake, Dry Lake, and then they removed the name of it, I'm thinking because of like real estate reasons, but it was called Mud Lake. And then there was like a creek network connecting all the lakes, and in there was like rainbow trout and landlocked salmon and stuff like that. So plenty of food, moose coming through there. It's like a very like in terms of like stuff to do, stuff to eat. It's got everything. It's bountiful. But we saw that the tracks went from our little hill coming out of the bush diagonally across the street and towards the other side of the lake. And I thought it was odd. I was like, why would somebody be just walking through there? He's like, they had snowshoes on. Let's just drop it. Blah. And, stuff was like, you just sort of go with it, but like, you know what it is, right? And these guys have said, hey, our neighbor's having a barbecue. You want to come and join us? Because we were going to go over there after we were sledding. I was like, okay. It's almost time. You want to take a shortcut? So we took a shortcut through the woods. And we get through the woods, across one lake, up a trail, across the other lake, to the backside of this guy's little barbecue he had. So there's already like 30 people there. They're all gathered around this big bonfire in the backyard. They're cooking hot dogs and hamburgers and all this stuff. It's middle of winter. Alaskans got a party when they got a party, I guess. But so we show up and they're like, oh my gosh. And like the owner of the house is like, man, you kids are brave for coming out of there. She knew what I saw. And then I'm like, what'd you see? And then like some of the neighbors like, no. We want to give them nightmares. We don't want to tell them. And then he started talking about how like the howls he heard at night. And I was like, what kind of howls? It's like, I've seen things, kid. You know what? I don't want to talk about it anymore. let's not talk about this. And he was getting kind of frustrated because I kept probing him. And we just sort of sat there eating hot dogs by this bonfire with this guy kind of just stewing in his memories. And like the mood sort of went from like laughter to a little like this weird awkward silence. But just eating quietly. And he said, like, boys, I want you to promise me you'll never go back into those woods again. I was like, okay. And of course, as kids are, we went right back into the woods like all the time. That following summer, my brother and I were like, it was a hot day, and like we had just got done visiting family, and like we were sort of over it. We wanted to go run around in the woods and mess around. And so we asked permission. They said we could go. And so we jump across the street and start heading down the hill to like the creek that's there. And there's like a couple of logs that crisscross across it. And it's like, it's got like a nice little deep hole where I'd love to, it was my favorite fishing spot. Like I would always catch something there.
We'll be back with more Bigfoot Society after these words from our sponsors.
And so I'm leading the way. My brother's like maybe 10 feet behind me. He's on the hilltop. I'm at the bottom of the hill on the log. I think this tree had fallen and uprooted a different tree and had like lifted up the root mass of it. And so it was like blocking the creek. And then when I was like got onto the log, I saw this hairy leg step into the creek. And like, I'm like, uh-oh, is that a bear? And like my brother froze, I froze, and like we just heard it like darting its arms around and just like quick like a cat, you know. And then all of a sudden you just see him like lift up a rainbow trout, and like he's just like and he's just like smacking on this fish, like just like like just making just, we'll just say masticating on this fish, like just, it sounded like loud smacking, crunching, like chewing on a raw fish. And then he like, we're sort of like trying to just like, our brains are trying to wrap our heads around like what we're looking at to make sure we're looking at what we're looking at, if it's a bear or not, or if it's another one of those things we saw, you know. And it stops for a second and it peeks over in the creek, and I catch a flash of red eyes, you know, like just a little bit. And then it backs in, and then I think a fish bumped it, and it grabbed the fish, and it started smacking on another one. And then after it was done, it stood up because it was down on like squatting down in this creek, and it had to been like, there was a hole in the creek, so it had been like 4 feet deep. It stood up, and its head went way over the root mass of this birch tree, and it was like, its hair was messy. It wasn't bear shaped, and it was like black skin, like jet black hair, like straight, but like kind of messy. And I could make out because it had splashed water all over its face, it was picking up some of the light. And the sun was starting to set a little bit, so it was a little dark in that depression where the creek was at. But I could make out it, like when it was looking at us, we were looking at him. And my brother was looking at me, and I looked at him. And he was just like, are we supposed to be running, you know? But I'm like just mesmerized by this thing. Like just, it puts out its hands and it moves the branch out of the way so it could get a better look at me. And there's just like a little like birch branch. It just like huge long black fingers with like hair on top of the on top of the hand, just like gently like moves the branch out of the way, and I'm just getting a full glimpse of this guy's head, and it's the pupils were dilated so big it was like about the size of like a nickel, like on each side. So it couldn't have been a person. It had to be one of those things, right? And it's like the hair is just crazy, and it's looking. And I'm catching the light, and I'm catching like the finer details, like the nose, like had really flared nostrils, and I almost thought it was a bear for a second because the nostrils were so flared, but it had like a wide bridge on the nose, and like the hairs on the cheek, which is like a human face, but just below like the cheekbone, the hairs came out to a point up to the nose, and they were like a lot looser, but more wiry, straight, and like with like a little bit of like, a little bit of water dripping off of them just a little bit, but like it really, like the moisture really picked up on the skin. I was able to really see the gauntness of like the cheeks, those really lean like cheeks. He didn't have any fat on him. I guess he was hungry, but at that moment I was like, okay, even if it's not a bear, we shouldn't be here. And my brother's like, we got to get out of here. I was like, I looked back, run. And so we start running up the hill, and that thing starts running too. It runs in the opposite direction. So it's like splashing through the creek. It gets onto the grass, and then it gets super low. It's like doing a spider crawl. And I get up to the top of the hill. It's only maybe like 30 yards, right? So it's not very far off the road. I stopped to look and to see it. Like, I want to make sure I can see it as it was like coming out, where it went. If I'm ever going in these woods again, I wanted to see where that thing was going. And I got to see it, like how it moved through. And it's like, it's such a long reach with the arms. And it was just using the trees and the saplings to sort of pull itself through the underbrush. It pulled its massive body underneath like this nasty spruce tree, like a dried out spruce tree. I had tried to cross that thing once or twice, and I like just get my shins all tore up, and I just stay off of that thing. That thing just busted through that, just swimming through the brush. And then it gets to the opposite bank and up next to the road, and it climbs out, and it is like massive. It's tall, hairy, like the whole thing was like, it was just like head to toe hair, and not long hair, just really frizzy, like short hair, maybe 3 inches. For the most part, the longest part hair on the body was on the shoulders and on the top of the hands, a little bit up the forearms. The backside, like his glutes, his little buns, they were like massive actually. They were like covered in a consistent hair, and like he's just like 1-2 like bounds, and he's up this embankment, and he's looking back at us, and he just goes, arf. He just gives like that grunt, that keep away grunt. And he gives like about 3 of them, and he's like already running with his huge arms, like just long arms. And like what was incredible is like I could see how his shoulders, because he was like slightly slouching, his shoulders were really droopy, but they were super broad. And how he ran was like his body sort of narrowed, and it really like slimmed down his profile when he was running, because the mechanic, I don't know, it's like his arms are swinging at an angle in front of him, and his legs were like crisscrossing in front of itself. And like he was like, had to have been like 50 yards within like 6 or 7 steps. Like it was just like he was like leap running, essentially. He's like doosh doosh, and he just gives out this ferocious howl. He's like, and like he's just cuts into the woods right where we saw those tracks previously. And so I knew that was a Bigfoot, and that was like right where we were playing, and like there was no mistaking it. And like the whole time I'm looking at this, my brother's like yanking on me, we gotta go, and I'm like just like focused on it, and like I snap out of it, we run inside. I tell the family, they're like, there's a debate, like, no, they're only down south, I heard. And like my dad's like, I've never seen anything or any of that. He actually worked up in the gold mines up in the Talkeetna Mountains, and so he's been up in Hatcher Pass and all that stuff, and so he's been up in and around the whole area for decades before we came to him with this little story. So he didn't believe us one bit, and it was just like he just said, well, whatever it is, it ran away, it's not going to come back. And so I trusted him enough to just say, okay, it did run away, so that was going to be it. Like I wasn't going to see anything about it. So then I sort of put it in the back of my mind, and eventually, you sort of forget about it a little bit. You move on with your life. And that part was sort of left me with like, you have the occasional nightmare here and there, but you always got to check, like you always look over your shoulder.
What year about did that happen?
This was probably, I would say this was about, I would say 1990 or 1991.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're about what age again?
Oh, I am 43 now. I'm about to be 44.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think a little while, like a few years later, I worked up the courage to still go into the woods and all that stuff. And like our friends, we all would go mess around in those woods. Even after all of that stuff, we're still bored, I guess. I would often take this trail that went between the two lakes, and it went diagonally towards Wolf Lake, and that's an old military reservation that sort of like is like butted up against the Talkeetna Mountains and into right at the opening of Hatcher Pass and all that stuff. But I would often go up there, take my dog or whatever, and go like grouse hunting with like a little 22. I did it all the time, and sometimes like this time that I went, I ended up leaving my dog behind because I just didn't want him barking. I just wanted him to like get the jump on the birds and come home and everything. And like the dog got excited a lot, and he didn't like guns, and it was just it was always a hassle. So I left the dog, and as this trail like cuts straight through the woods for a good ways for a couple miles, and then it opens up to this clearing where I think they were like had, for whatever reason, like cut out a whole swaths of trees, like for whatever reason they had. But like every time I passed this spot, I noticed that the mountain looked really close. I was like wondering if I could walk up and like actually get to that mountain, and like decided, you know what, today is the day, I'm going to do it. And so, I got I'm looking around, making sure the coast is clear for me to just go off trail, because it was so clear and you could see so far, and it just seemed like such an easy little hike to like poke around and explore. So I decided to just do it. I get to about 2.5, 3 miles in. I start to notice like the mountain's getting pretty close, but it's still really far away. And maybe I I'd have just turned back. I'd have gotten to a lake and I was tired and I was like, this is good enough. This is neat, but I should get back. And I turn around. I'm like right next to this cluster of trees. And it thins out at the point, and there's like another cluster of trees like a little farther out, and like then this like huge like clearing, like a huge field. And like I look over and I sees what seems like a guy in a hooded jacket just sort of walking, like a lanky looking guy just walking through the field. And I in Alaska in general, like if you're out in the bush at any point, like there's a possibility you might run into a trapper, because like they do like work the creek systems, and like they'll go up along the mountains and like the backcountry.
We'll be back with more Bigfoot Society after these words from our sponsors.
And like they'll set some lines every now and then, and so I assume that's what it was, just a trapper or some guy hiking around. So this guy, he's walking like he's really just like swinging his arms, like he's really tired. He looks a little slouchy, and then but I can't quite make it out because like the moisture off of the grass and the sunlight was creating sort of like a mirage effect, and so it was distorting what I was seeing. So I couldn't quite make out the silhouette until he got really close, and I realized it wasn't a guy. It was another Sasquatch, and like it's walking right at me, and I'm like, it doesn't see me because I'm just out of line of sight behind this cluster of trees. I'm looking, it's like, if I try to go that way, he's going to see me and he might try to follow me home. And I didn't want that either. And so I just sort of hung back and waited, and I just had to really think. And I looked around, make sure none of the others were on me or something, or if I wasn't getting surrounded in any way. And it looked like it was just a lone one just walking through. And I didn't want to like be too aggressive or anything like that. I just realized like I just have to be really calm and cool. It's like you know, you run into like a bear, you go bear rules. You just be real calm, have a real like stern voice, and just look big. And that's all I could do, because all I had on me was like a little 22 rifle. It was one of the Apache. I think it was a Remington Apache, but I only had like 3 or 4 rounds left from like missing shots, and so I had no way to defend myself really. I was really flapping in the wind, and I'm just like sort of make a decision to just hang back a second and just see where this thing goes, and I might not have to deal with it. And I decided, like, what my dad taught me was like when we were tracking caribou, you can go up to the herd, and if you just like slowly squat down, they won't like see you right away, and they'll think you're part of the terrain. And so I did that, and because like they're not a prey animal, he saw me do this move, and then he immediately stops, looks, and he just starts like makes a straight beeline straight for me, and he's running, and like he's covering ground like crazy. It looked like a football player, like just rushing me. And then all of a sudden it gives like a bound and a bound, and then it leaps. It did like a long jump essentially, but like farther than like your like a normal long jump. It was like it must have been like twice the distance. But like it jumps, it lands, and immediately goes into like a spider crawl position, and it is like puffing its cheeks and just breathing and like looking around and like what's going on, it was clear that I was not supposed to be there, and it was trying to like size me up and try to figure out what to do with me, because I wasn't moving. I stood back up, I let him see me. And it was just like he was looking at me. Then he looked at the trees behind me. And then he's looking at me, like he looks at the trees behind me. I look over and I see, as soon as I break eye contact with him, he looks at me again and he starts, with his long arms, he starts to pull himself through. He starts moving. I was like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. And he looks again and he like slinks in there. You can hear him just like crashing. And I could see his arms grabbing like branches as he's like pulling and like sort of like swinging through and then like just crashing through the woods. And I was like, all right, I'm going. I said, I'm going. And I start walking. I don't run, but I'm like walking briskly to the other cluster of woods. And as soon as I get to the next cluster of woods, I start running. And so as soon as I get out the clearing of this cluster of woods, he's already running up to the next cluster of woods in front of me. He's already ready to intercept me. Like he had beat me to like the next field over. And it was just, I was thinking he was just so like messing around, about to come out of the bush or out of those trees behind me and start chasing me that way, but he didn't. He backtracked. He went all the way around and like caught up with me, and he was ready. He was looking, and he yanked the tree. He yanked the tree clean down. He just broke the branch right off. He's like rocking, and he's just like trying to just keep his composure, but he's like rocking, and he's like getting real huffy. And I'm just like walking again. I'm like looking at him, making eye contact. He's looking at me, and then he looks over again, and I see what he's going to do. And like there's a choke point where there's a cluster of trees on the left, and the one he was at was on the right. And there was like this thin point where they come together. There's about 15 feet separation between the two, and I had to go through that. And so I start walking briskly as fast as I can, and he darts into the woods, and you can hear him just like crashing through. And about midway, he pops his head up, and it's and then he pops it back down, and I get through past the choke point, and I can hear him crashing behind me. And I'm looking over my shoulder at him to see what's about to happen. And like he gets within like 10 feet of me, and he just stops. It goes dead silent, just dead silent. And I'm like thinking I'm about to die or get ripped apart or whatever. And like he was on me, and he just stopped. And I just kept walking and walking, and there was another big cluster. And all of a sudden I hear him like come out, and he's running to the next cluster of trees, but this one's much bigger. And I get in there, and it's like a longer stretch, and there's like a little like clearing inside that cluster of trees, and he's right there, right in the middle of it. And there's like trees like snapped over and bent, and like something's been thrashing. Well, obviously it's been thrashing around in there, and that was his little spot. And I'm walking through essentially his living room, and he's like hanging on there, and like he's like just chomping his teeth, and like I can't see his top teeth, but his bottom teeth were sticking out a little bit. And he's just like looking at me, and I'm trying to maintain eye contact with him and just be as assertive as possible. And it broke eye contact with me, and I looked down, and it's still like puffing itself up, but it's not making like, it's like retreating its eye contact with me. And like looking back, I'm like, I shouldn't have been doing that. I shouldn't have been like making like direct eye contact like that. But it happened to work in that situation. But most primates, it's like a challenge, and usually that means you're behind, you know. But as I pass through, he's just sort of like rocking back and forth, and I pass through, and there's a clearing, just a field, and I can see the trail, and I get to the trail, and I'm like about to hyperventilate, and I'm like, but I have to like run. It's time to run. And like I'm breathing, I got my hands on my knees, and I'm looking down, and I'm seeing like scattered bone piles of like moose that have been like killed like previous summers. Like there was a lot of bones, and I'm just standing on top of these multiple kill piles, and I'm like, I really have to get out of there. So I ran the hardest I ever ran in my life down that trail, and got through, and like never mentioned it to anybody. And like, I don't know, it just I think I compartmentalized the whole situation, because I remember going there, but I didn't. But it was always like broken up memories, and I never really made the connection of what had happened. I think I blacked it out, and I only remembered it until like last month, when my wife was talking to me, and we were driving in the car, and there was like the background of the light, and like something about the situation just like created a snowball effect where I started remembering stuff, and then like all of a sudden I'm like really like piecing things together, and it just like all just like hit me. Like I experienced this part, and like I didn't have any recollection up until just then of this part that happened, because like I remembered walking through the woods and like all this stuff, but like the most intense part was like the close up when I was in that clearing where he was like making eye contact with me. He couldn't have been more than like 20 feet away, and like the light was like dappled, and but you know, you could see like his whole like fur pattern was crazy. He had like a blonde patch on the front side of his, around like the brim of his like face. His the skin on his face was splotchy and like freckly kind of. The hair was like a rich red. The head came up to a point, you know, the classic Sasquatch look, but like a lot of what I've seen in like a lot of the drawings, this guy didn't have. It was more like lanky, just so muscular, but like elongated muscles, you know, like a long tube. Like you could see the muscles were there, but it was not like big bulgy muscles. They were just strong, long muscles, and like his reach was crazy. That guy, I believe he was probably like about 9 or 10 feet tall. But the that was probably the most intense moment, I mean, of my life. But it had left me with like, I'd always often have like these nightmares of like Bigfoot coming to get me. I didn't understand why, until it was like I had like started piecing things together, and it really is shocking like how much my brain had like compartmentalized everything about it. And yeah, I don't know. It's just with a lot of this stuff, it always kept a leveling of anxiety. You know, every time you go camping, anytime you go out, there's always like they might be out there, they might be just right next to you, you know, and it's unsettling, because it's if they wanted to, they like, you couldn't. There's nothing you could do to like really stop them. And but like the personality, it's like there was a difference in personality, I would say, between the two. Like the black skinned one, the black furred one, was very like very aloof, very shy. But the red one with the blonde patches. He also had patches on his chest, but like the patchwork on on that one was crazy, but like the personality is more aggressive.
We'll be back with more Bigfoot Society after these words from our sponsors.
Way more aggressive. Maybe I just surprised him and that's why he was aggressive, but like he was very much showing himself to me, and like it seemed like two like polar opposites in terms of like personality.
Josh, thank you for, I mean, that is probably the most intense encounter I've heard. I would say across the board. I mean, first off, thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that. That is extremely, extremely intense, and no one would ever blame you for not going into the woods or camping by yourself ever. Like, that's hands down the best reason not to. I mean, I totally understand how you're camping in groups now, and it sounds like you're working through it, which is great.
Yeah. It's like I do have to like remember that, like, as much as like there's like an anxiety about like not wanting to do things, I have to do things for my daughter in order for her to like really grow up and like be like a happy, healthy person, you know, and sometimes you just gotta bite the big one and just like sort of deal with it, and not sort of put that terror or that fear in her, but just like a healthy respect is what I'm trying to get for her. But like it's real hard to like just like keep it together when you're like, you know, it's like you're exposed, you know.
Absolutely. When you're going through that whole situation with the creature chasing you, thinking
Mm-hmm.
back to that time period, if you had to say, would you say you were getting more human-like characteristics or ape-like characteristics, or was it something completely different than the two?
I would say I've seen like people exhibit those behaviors, but like in terms of like a connection, like we were both like, I would say it's more on the human side. Like it's just like the intelligence level was there, like the spark was there, and like the way I look at it, it's like we have all these modern conveniences. We can do a lot of things because we have machines to help us do it, and with them, it's like none of that. So you can run faster, you can leap farther, you can move quicker, you can grab things quicker. You can get low and you can crawl and you can climb and you can do all the things you need to survive and get up on like whatever you're trying to get. But to do that in like a subarctic environment where the winters are so harsh, like no clothes on, like it's crazy. But like if you look at the fur and all that stuff, it's just they've adapted to just being outside. But the feet and like the hands, everything is very human, but the proportions are like much taller. If I was like looking through like all the hominid species and like I would say, like, if I were to guess, I would say it's somewhere between like Homo habilis and Homo erectus, but with like the height of like Cro-Magnon. So like you're like 10, 12 feet tall, but like still very like the face was like the bone structure and all that stuff. And like it did have like ape features, but it was more human than ape. It's like just a little human. It's like just our side of on the evolutionary tree. It's just, but just massive, like tall, massive, and incredibly powerful. Um, but the spark of intelligence, the fact that he intercepted me, he knew what I was doing, and we were caught up in this cat and mouse game of like just observing each other and trying to maintain distance and all this stuff, and we're gauging each other. You can't get that with like a bear or anything like that, or care, but they'll run or they'll charge you. But this was totally different. Like, he could charge me, but he didn't because he wanted to observe me. And we were both at this weird like standoff, and it was but just knowing that like he was consciously letting me slide, like he could have reached out and just snatched me up in a second, like it but he didn't. And so I think that makes me feel better, like in some ways, that there's like a certain level of consciousness to where like they're not just killing machines, like they're intelligent thinking creatures. Like, it feels more like a person than an animal. It's just like a superhuman, I guess.
Wow. I mean, that encounter alone, I think you'd be set for, the rest of your life. I mean, hopefully, I hope that's the worst thing that you've ever gone through. That had to have been extremely rough.
Well, I mean, I went out here in Oregon, after I did a little, you do your research, you start looking at things and start piecing things together, and you start to realize like how much signs you were overlooking. And then once you start, like, once the veil is like removed and you're really looking and see things for what they are. I was out in Sun River just the previous weekend, and I left my phone in the truck, and it was pitch black out there. There's not a lot of light out there. It's like way out in the country. It's just south of Bend, kind of high desert, real dry. And I figured I was like pretty safe because it seems like they like to like hang out in like wet places and the creeks and whatnot. But it just, something about it, like that pitch black. What I did was I just gave a little like whistle just to see if anything would react, and I could hear it. Like something started moving right towards me at an angle from like 100 yards out, like in the woods, stopping right before the road, and then like 3 or 4 steps was like about 30 feet. Like, just something huge was like got to me, and then it was like starting to circle around me. And I said, I'm not about to be like go fumbling for my phone and with a pitch black behind me with a monster in the darkness. I was like, all right, I'll get my phone tomorrow. And I shut the blinds, closed every single curtain in that cabin, and like just like said nobody's going outside. And like, bye. There's something out there. And like, you can't really just like break down and explain all this stuff to somebody that's just never experienced it, right? And so, but like after that, like during that whole week, like at one point we were coming home from dinner, and my daughter and my wife are like chatting and talking about whatever, and like in the distance I can hear something over by the river just going, like just giving like a gentle like hoot sound, and it wasn't like a bird, it was like a primate, right? But it was like a couple miles down the road, but like you could hear it. And like it's like I don't want to like just sort of spoil the fun to say, hey daddy, here's some noises in the distance. Like, everybody's having a good time. I'm not about to spoil the party, but like I went and checked out I like to frequent the Bigfoot sightings like blotter map. I have one on my it's an arcgis.com. Oh yeah, it's Bigfoot sightings and density of the U.S. with biomes. Let's see. Tell you what, I'll send you the link. But I checked the down here in Oregon. I checked the cabin, and like not maybe like about a mile and a half, 2 miles away, there was two like reported sightings just south of the cabin. So it wasn't just like something in my head. I was just hearing things like stepping around, and maybe it's just me being paranoid because I saw so much. But it was like close enough, and in like there was like two sightings, and they both are in line and like with the cabin. So like I was clearly in the path of whatever would be coming through, and like so it confirmed to me like it had to be that. Like if I'm hearing the hoots and I can hear it step, and it's got massive, you know how you can like with cadence, you can like, you don't have to see it, but you can hear it and you can tell that it's like it's big. And sort of like I'm able to like, not seeing it, I'm tracking it through the darkness, right? But it confirmed to me that like, yeah, that I was right. They're out there. It's okay. And like, nothing happened. But it just, you realize like with all the, I've been listening to your show for a bit, and it's like there's just so many sightings, and they're all over the place. And I see these shows where they're going deep into the mountains and like getting reaction shots and like trying to like hunt down this thing, and I don't think they need to go that far. Like a lot of people that find them are just like in their local park, like just off the trail, or like some are way up in the mountains, but it's like it's wherever there's water and wherever there's food, they're probably there. It's it's like so it's out of your control, right? So you can't do anything about it, but like live your life. And so I've just been sort of like trying to use that to like comfort myself, really.
I've been trying to think in my mind of how to categorize you, Josh, because it's very interesting, because it's almost like, so I would say it's like you're a hunter, but you've had your eyes opened and you're very aware of what really is out in the woods. I don't know. Would you agree with that? Or
you kind of have to be a hunter to like sort of like to like you can't just like go out and looking for Bigfoot, because you're overlooking the signs. Like you got to know how to track, you got to like judge the wind, you got to know where you're standing, like what's around you. And just that alone, like you should be able to like, if you hear something outside the tent, you should be able to identify what it sounds like, what it is, and where it's at. And if you should be asleep, or if you should be like pulling the safety off and like wait for the big show, but it's, yeah, I would say that's definitely like a good way to categorize it. The whole thing is just like, when I look, because I grew up caribou hunting, we'd be glassing up on hills out in the tundra, and like if I'm out hunting with other people from the lower 48, I'm looking at deer that are like 5 miles away up on a hilltop, and I'm able to see them move around, and it's like there's a deer. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they have to pull out the glasses and see it. And then it's like, yeah, he's right. Holy cow. And like when you're hunting for moose, they like to hide in thick cuts of like spruce, like black spruce. And like they blend in really well. And so you have to like, when you're driving down the road, you have to look for tracks along the road, but you also have to look into the woods. And you're sort of like studying as you cruise by. You got to look for anything that looks out of place, and like you're studying as you go. And then like after a while, like you do it instinctively. You don't, like when I was a kid, it was real hard. It was really taxing on the brain to do all that stuff. But after a while, it becomes second nature, and then you're just seeing things. And now I'm at this point, where like, because I've been raised to hunt, I'm able to notice more. And a lot of things are overlooked that are like just right under your nose. Like you probably had 10 encounters and you didn't even know it, you know? But yeah.
It's fascinating to think about, but I don't think you're too far off. I mean, yeah, it's how many things are happening when we're out there in the woods. We're just not looking at the signs the right way. Totally agree.
Oh, one trick I've learned that really helps is if you go camping, just like if don't start a fire, just put your back against a tree and just sit there and just at night and just let everything sort of happen, and you're just quietly sitting there letting nature walk by. All the little creatures coming through. Like, is it a field mouse or is it a dump truck? You know, your brain switches on, and you notice a whole lot more after you do that. And let's say the next time you do go camping, just do that. Just like sit in the darkness and like let your night vision sort of take over, and just sort of listen to the sounds. And don't talk, just listen and see, smell. And your brain switches on you, and like after that you can smell more, you can see more, you're just more aware. I think if you're in a city a lot, there's so much stimulation going on, your brain just goes numb to everything. And so you gotta stop and like shut down and just like sort of be present in what's happening right now.
That is fascinating to think about. I think I will be definitely taking that advice. Josh, this has been a very interesting chat, and thank you for being, again, vulnerable enough to share what's happened to you over the years. It's incredible encounters, man.
Yeah, it's still, I'm still like piecing more together, but like, so at some point you just have to like move on and just like let it happen, like these things happened and it's okay. And if a lot of people, they're skeptics, they're always going to be skeptics. They're just those people. You just like, don't even spin your wheels. Like, don't worry, don't waste your time on them. If they're here, they're listening, they've seen it, there's enough people. Eventually the skeptics will change their tune once some satisfying evidence is presented, but like there's just too much going on for people not to like say, okay, there's something going on,
Absolutely. If anything does, if you're fortunate to have additional things happen to you in the future, please, by all means, reach out. I would love to chat with you again, but it's been a really fun and enlightening time talking to you tonight, Josh.
Oh yeah, I'm just glad you gave me the opportunity, because like it's not something you can just like spout off, But yeah, thank you.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend, Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, Bigfoot Society, if you have an encounter, a sighting, anything weird, Bigfoot related or not Bigfoot related that's happened in a state forest in Iowa, reach out to me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. The focus is state forests in Iowa. Thank you. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.